Brumbies season for 2020. It's kind of fitting that I'm talking about an Aussie team at the moment because it's not that late here. It's only 5:30, and this season in New Zealand it doesn't get dark until almost 9 p.m. But today it has been hazy and kind of yellow in the sky since about 2 o'clock, and I believe that's linked to those big raging fires over in Australia. So yeah, thoughts are with the Australian people, I guess. As always, it's been in the news a lot here, but it got a bit more real for us Kiwis today, especially those of us in Auckland, because it's been down the south for a while. But man, is it dark. I've had to put a light on because it is just very, very dark. But yeah, Brumbies, Super Rugby. I'll talk a bit about their 2019 season because I think that went pretty well. The squad for 2020, the expectations, and yeah, basically that's it. So, not sure how well this video will do in terms of views. The Brumbies content doesn't seem to get that much. Even their own YouTube channel gets bugger all views, and they put out some pretty decent content. So I'm not sure whether it's just Canberra has a smaller fan base or what. Maybe you guys can enlighten me. But anyway, the Brumbies are your favourite team in terms of the odds for Aussie teams next year anyway, so hopefully they do get some love even if it's not online. Last year they finished with a record of 10 wins, 6 losses, 48 points, and they made the playoffs in third. They would have been fourth if not for the conference system, so it's not one of those years where it was like a real sham of a third place. It was, they could have been one position lower, but they were still one of the top teams in Super Rugby, so it's kind of fitting that they went on to make the semi-finals. They did lose their semi-final win out to the Jaguares, 39 points to 7, but they did a pretty good one over the Sharks. I think it was 13 points to 38 or something. I did check this out, but I didn't write it down. So, yeah, they did pretty well last year, I thought. Actually, there's one stat I forgot to check. Bear with me just a second. Right, I just checked a stat, and it is the way I thought it was. But I'll get to that in a second. 2019, what went well? Like I said, they finished on the table pretty well. In terms of their tactical stats and whatnot, they were the 6th best team for average points scored per game, which is, top half, so pretty solid. But in terms of tries, they were 2nd. So the goal kicking maybe lets them down a little bit. But also the fact that if you look at the amount of penalties they attempt, they were the 15th team in Super Rugby. So the Brumbies like to score tries. They don't like to kick for 3. And when they've got a maul like they do, they would much rather have the 5 or potentially the 7. So yeah, it pays off a lot for them. So they don't take kicks for 3. So their points are not top, but their tries are certainly well up there. Line-out percentage on their own ball was 5th. The error rate was 13th, so that's good to be at the bottom for that one. Interestingly, of the top teams, like the Crusaders, Jaguares, and Hurricanes all concede a lot more penalties than they win. The Brumbies are the first team to buck that trend. They were the 4th team for winning penalties, but again, a lot of that is probably pressure created at ruck and maul time. And then penalties conceded, they are 8th, so they are generally on the right side of the referee's ledger. Interestingly, they're the number 2 team for having to make, for tackles made per game. But if you've got all the possession, you're not going to be able to make that many tackles. So they seem to be a team which spends a wee bit of time without the ball and has to hold things up defensively. In terms of areas that they don't excel, like run meters, they were the 12th best team. But again, if you can win penalties, kick it down and maul it up, you don't necessarily need to get all the run meters in the world. Interestingly, also 7+ phases per game. How many times you hit 7 or more phases? They were 15th, the last team. Again, I'm trying to think, how does that relate to their tactics? Do they just get the ball turned over? The error rate's low, so it's not that they're dropping it and conceding it. Maybe it's just the plays they use generally don't go more than 7+ phases. If they don't score, then they kick. If they don't make the ground, they kick. Or if they're on their 5-meter attacking lineup, it's not going to take 7 phases to get those points. So, yeah, it was an interesting one. Also 15th for offloads, but again, that's just kind of a tactical choice. they don't want to be offloading the ball. They like to play it safe, and that also probably helps keep their error rate as low as it does. Goal kicking, they were 10th, 75%. Like I said, not the best, but they don't take that many shots apart from conversions. Kick meters, they're 14th, so they're not kicking the ball that much up the field. That's kicks in play, so that's not how they're making it up. Individuals, if you're looking for a man to get you some run meters for the Brumbies, it's Tom Banks, kind of no surprises. Alan Alatoa is your guy for pick and drives, and his scrummaging, I think, was pretty much top class. Pocock was your Pilfers man, but he only played like 3 games, so it's really hard to take his stats into account. McCaffrey was their next best, but by some margin on average per game, he was a lot lower. Carter was your tackles man. Cusack also, but he had a higher rate of like conceding penalties. Banks and Kurandrani, interestingly, also had your tackle busts. But again, in the scheme of things for Super Rugby, not that high, but in the Brumbies, they were the highest. But the interesting one in the stat that I wanted to look up to double check was try scorers. Who was their top try scorer? Sure enough, it was Folau Fainga with 12 tries scored last season. They really made that maul such a weapon. The next best in the Brumbies was Tavita Kurandrani with 7, so substantially lower. So yeah, I think overall the Brumbies played to their strength last year, and yeah, I enjoyed watching them. They tore my Blues to bits. I remember when we went over to Canberra, it was pretty embarrassing. So they know what they do, and they do it really well. And I find it a really fun watch. I mean, I know some people only like to see like the Chiefs and offloading and crazy magic stuff, but these guys just do their job so well, and the attitude generally seems to be pretty good. I think Folau Fainga sometimes does a couple of cringeworthy things from memory, but for the most part, the guys are pretty... Yeah, I just remember when the Reds had a really good set piece, and their guys used to make me cringe, but not these Brumbies. Anyway, I promise it's not an Aussie thing. How's the squad looking for next year? They have got a few guys out in terms of like their locks. Carter and Arnold have both left, so that's a huge gap for them to fill. They were kind of blessed with locks last year, having good backups, but with the 2 key men gone, that's a big gap. The next biggest one you're thinking about is Liliafano. He's gone, and so is Hawera. So their first and second choice 10s have also left. So I think those are the 2 key areas that the Brumbies will need to get right for 2020, because other areas are looking pretty solid. Other guys who have left, Jackson Hope's gone, which is kind of a bit disappointing. He's pretty early on in his career. Decided to head to Japan. Chance Penny, Henry Spate, Matt Lucas, all those guys have also left. There are others, but yeah, those are kind of some of the key ones. In terms of guys in, Shambek Lavui's coming in from the Tars. I think he only got like 1 game with the Tars last year, but it's good to have depth in your props. Caden Neville, he's going to have to fill that gap in the second row for sure. Solomon Akata, more known for his league days, so how he slots in with that Brumbies backline will be interesting. Will Miller, again from the Tars, and a fair few young guys as well. I think one of the scrum halves has come from the Force, so yeah, it will be an interesting one. But as I said, it is lock and it is 10 that I would be a little bit worried about. In terms of a potential starting 15, you could have a front row of Sio, Fainga, and Alalatoa, so same as 2019, and those guys wreaked havoc on Super Rugby. So definitely will be key in terms of winning those penalties, especially at scrum time. Second row will be different though. I mean, I've picked Neville and Blake Eneva, so those guys could do a job. The back row is one area they do have a lot of depth. Like I've said, Samu, McCaffrey, and Cusack could make up the back row. Powell could be at 9. For 10, I really took a stab in the dark. I had a quick read around, and apparently there's a couple of the guys who've been playing in the NRC. Noah Lolasio seems to be the favoured guy to get his hands on the 10 jersey for the Brumbies, but I can't remember seeing him play. I've seen a handful of NRC games in my time, so any insights into how he's likely to go, or any of the other potential candidates at 10, I will be interested. Simone and Kurandrani potentially in the midfield. The back 3 could be Solomon Akata, Pulu, and Banks. I think Banks at 15 is pretty much a shoe-in, but and probably Pulu on one of the wings. It's just that other wing that remains open. Other guys who I haven't named but are also there: Slipper McInerney, Les Macon, Murray Douglas is another option in the second row. Valtini, Miller in the back row. Tom Wright is another option. Mac Hansen, Andy Muirhead. So there's depth. I wouldn't say all around, but in certain positions, like the back row is honestly really, really well stacked. The front row is not too bad either. It's just some of the other positions that not so much. So, we'll have to see how things kind of go. In terms of the expectations, I think I haven't had a look at a full list of the other squads. I know the Tars aren't going to be favourites. The Rebels have bled a few guys. The Reds could be a bit of a dark horse, but I think they'll still be favoured to win the Aussie Conference. I think that's probably the expectation. I think less than that would probably be a bit disappointing. Bookies have got them as the favourite Aussie team for sure, although bookies have got them 9th favourite overall, which seems kind of nonsense in that they're ahead of the Blues. I know the Blues are getting bowed and barrel, but still, they're ahead of the Blues, they're ahead of the Highlanders, behind the Blues, behind the Highlanders, behind like the Lions, who've also lost a lot of players. They're behind the Stormers, but the Stormers have retained most of their team, so yeah, I think the Brumbies are better value than that for sure. But certainly some areas to work on. They'll have to play to their strengths. They've still got that core in the forwards in terms of the front row. Second row, one to watch. Who runs the show in the back line? Big question for me. I have been keen on, or at least I've been impressed by the coach. Jeez, what's his name? It's just escaped me. Dude with the glasses. Dan. You know the guy. He's doing a good job. This will be his 3rd season. And I really think he's making good progress. Like when they were under Larkham, I wasn't convinced, but I feel like they're on the right track now. So, God, that's annoying. I can picture his face right now. Total mind blank. I should say, in terms of the schedule, they do not too bad in terms of having 3 home games at the start to really get their season underway against the Reds, Rebels, and Highlanders. So 3 games that they should be targeting wins with. Away trip to the Chiefs, then a bye. They do have the trip to Japan before kind of a mix of home and away games. They get their bye before the trip to South Africa, which I think is perfect because they can manage when they arrive in South Africa. Do they go early to get acclimatized? They could potentially do that. And then they finish. Their final 3 games are all in Australia. 2 of them are away to the Rebels and Tars. Final one against the Sunwolves. So they don't have to travel outside Australia for those final 3 games. I think is definitely beneficial. So I am keen. I am keen for the Brumbies to kick off and to kick on basically and show us that they can, really challenge and upset some teams in Super Rugby 2020. I hope they fly the flag for the Aussie teams as well, because Aussie Rugby could certainly use a winning team as well. And not convinced the other teams will get there, but I still haven't done their previews yet, so I'll look at their teams in more detail in the coming days. But cheers guys. If you're a Brumbies fan, give me some insights onto this number 10 situation, because I'm a wee bit in the dark, but literally in the dark because it's hazy outside. Anyway, I'm going to take off. I'll talk to you guys again soon. Cheers. See you later.